Welcome to LCTV, in partnership with the Dolphin, the first of many collaborations bringing you insightful conversations with some of the most influential voices in journalism. I'm Carly Nicolai, editor-in-chief of the Dolphin student newspaper, and I have the privilege of speaking with John Archibald, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist whose investigative work has left a lasting impact. From his award-winning commentary to his in-depth investigative reporting, John has consistently pushed the boundaries of local journalism, shining a light on critical issues that shape our communities. Join us as we dive into his career, his passion for storytelling, and the evolving landscape of journalism in today's world. John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Great, thank you. So first question, you've had an incredible career in journalism. So what initially drew you to reporting and commentary?
Well, reporting led me into commentary, really, and it was a long ride getting to reporting because when I came to college not knowing what I wanted to do and wandered into the student newspaper, and I fell madly in love, both with the woman who would become my wife, who covered the SGA, but also with this business, which is, it just constantly amazes me that, you can write stuff down or create things that people read and consume and respond to, and it got in my blood then and has never gotten out. So I owe everything I am to my student newspaper.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that as editor-in-chief of our student newspaper here. It's important work we do as journalists, I believe.
It really is, and some of the best journalism in America is student journalism. Because people are so passionate about it, and they do work, and they're just, in many cases, just learning to find their own voice.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that with, just a zeal that, I wish everybody could do throughout their lives, So it's congratulations to you.
Thank you. Well, so you've spent much of your career covering Alabama. What is it about the region that keeps you engaged as a journalist?
Well, it's a target-rich environment for one thing. I mean, there are a lot of issues associated with it, but the bottom line is that it's the place I'm from. It's my home, and I have a love-hate relationship with it. To be honest with you, I mean, I love so many things about it. I love the music. I love the culture. I love the food, and I hate the corruption and the injustice that happens so frequently, often in the name of freedom. So people ask me all the time, why don't I leave? And I ask them, if your house leaks, do you just move out, or do you try to fix it? And it may be arrogant to think that I can fix it, but I can sure try.
Yeah, no, that's great. Just all those little things you can do to kind of help your own community.
I mean, you got to
respect that.
You got to think you can make a difference,
Yeah.
and even if you can't, you got to try.
Right. Yeah. Well, so you kind of mentioned this, but your columns often tackle tough and complex issues. So how do you approach writing about controversial topics while maintaining that journalistic integrity?
Yeah. Well, for half of my career, I guess I was a straight news reporter, and that was one animal. You go out and you find things out that people don't know, and you dig deep and you put it out there. But as a columnist, I do have an opinion, so I have a fairly strong one, people would say, which is funny to me because I never thought of myself as overly opinionated and still don't. But people would disagree with me because of that. But I mean, I think what you've got to do is you've still got to do reporting for opinion just the same way you would do for a straight news piece. And then you have to have a point of view, and you have to, sort of tell people how you think about it. I don't try to convince people to think like me,
right? But
I want them to think.
Yeah.
And I want them to be entertained in some way too. I want them to find reason to read it and to hopefully understand the world a little bit better.
Yeah. No, I definitely believe in that as well. That it's more about the information you put out than trying to persuade or whatever. It's you still have to have, integrity, like I just, asked you about. So I totally understand what you're saying here. Yeah,
and you have to build that trust sort of over time. And it's difficult, when you're writing things that are not always popular.
Yeah.
But it's really important, to be unpredictable and to say the things that you believe and to make sure that you have done your research and you've done your homework and you correct your errors and you do the things to develop relationships with readers, and that's the only way you can sort of be successful in these days, and so you can't work hard enough to do that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of success, in 2018 you won the Pulitzer Prize for commentary. So what did that recognition mean to you, and how did it impact your work moving forward?
It's bizarre and crazy to think that if you start in this business, that's always sort of the brass ring that you want to reach for. And then when you win it, you think you've made it for a day or two, and then you realize because you're in the news business that you're really only as good as what you did yesterday. And so there's an incredible sort of craving or urge to go out and do something good again. To prove that you deserved it.
You have to one-up yourself a little bit.
Right. It's like, because there's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes along with it. It's like, and to be realistic, it's a contest, and contests are inherently arbitrary.
Yeah.
And so you take it with a grain of salt. But it's opened up a lot of doors. It's allowed me to do things I never would have imagine doing, write books and plays and, videos and podcasts and things that have really made my life in journalism fun.
Yeah.
And so I ain't giving that thing back, but I also acknowledge that, I'll be as worried about what I can do tomorrow as I was at what I did then.
Yeah. So you were also part of the investigative team that won the 2023 Pulitzer Prize for local reporting. So can you walk us through that investigation and what made it stand out?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I had been on a leave of absence for about a year or more with a book and a fellowship, and it was right after COVID, and I felt out of sorts, shall we say, and I was not really comfortable coming back and writing my column because the world was just so full of hot takes then that it didn't seem like it needed another one, particularly from somebody who'd been gone away from his sources and all that. So I got involved in this project that was looking at criminalization of poverty, which is a big, complicated thing that is something very close to my heart, but something very difficult to get readers to really bite on. And so the challenge was trying to find something that could represent what that meant in a way that readers would pay attention. And I stumbled across this little town called Brookside. And a lawyer actually said, hey, there's something going on in Brookside, you should check it out. And I started to check it out, and it was a town that had increased its revenue from fines and fees by 640% in a couple of years, had gone from a one-man police department to 14, had all these SUVs that were blacked out and cops that wore SWAT gear to make arrests on the interstate and wouldn't identify who they were using fines and fees to pay for half the city budget, which is unheard of. And they had a tank.
Wow.
The kicker for me was that they used a drug-sniffing dog named Cash to search people's cars so they could arrest them on multiple charges and raise a whole lot of money. They weren't subtle, let's say.
On the nose.
So it's like the minute I saw those audit reports, it's like the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I knew we had something. But going out and talking to them and really finding out the depth of what they were doing to people made the difference. And the story came out, and I've been doing this for 40 years, and I've never seen as much impact from a story as that one, and the follow-ups did. They changed 4 laws. They fired in most of the police department. The promise to do better. They were audited, and it was all confirmed. And ultimately, as the icing on the cake, the police chief, who had been dismissed from the department, was driving through South Alabama, had not yet turned in his Brookside police badge, which no longer was official, got caught for speeding, flashed his badge, which was no longer valid, and was arrested for impersonating a police officer.
A little bit of karma, I guess.
It was some karma. So he ended up pleading out and agreed never to be with the requirement that he could never again be a police officer in Alabama.
Yeah, it's those stories that have like that community impact. It kind of we're talking about just a little bit ago.
Yeah, I mean honestly, the best part about it is I spent much of my career writing about corruption and whatnot by officials, and a lot of those had impact. But in the wake of this, hundreds of charges were dropped, and if you're a journalist and people come to you and say, "Thank you, nobody would listen to me," I got my life back. Thank you. That was sort of the most moving thing that's ever happened in my career, and it sort of, puts in perspective why it's important to do what we do.
Yeah, for sure. And as you know, investigative journalism is often grueling and time-consuming. So what was the biggest challenge you faced during that reporting process?
Well, the really difficult thing was finding that place that would represent it, like the Rosetta Stone, to help people understand criminalization of poverty. Because, I've worked a lot longer on projects. I've worked a lot harder trying to find things out. But the way that one rolled out was almost so easy that it makes me feel guilty. Because a lot of people hold it up as an example of local journalism and whatnot, but I can't help but think that this place is only 20 miles away from Birmingham, which is where I live, and I can't help but think if we really were doing great local news journalism on a regular basis, it would never have happened,
right?
Because we would have known about it and nipped it in the bud, I think, before that, But I think the reason it was successful was, because it was egregious and because it was entertaining. Right. You got a tank and a dog named Cash and the chief who says, there should be more. If we worked harder, we'd put more people in, court or whatever. So it was one of those stories that you just dream of.
Right.
And I think we were able to write it in a way that was easy to understand. I think it's really important to write things in ways that people can digest and understand, and it wasn't complicated, and I think that was the secret.
Yeah, that's half the battle is getting people to engage with it and, writing compelling works. So I would give you a little more credit than you're giving yourself here.
Well, a lot of the work came on the back end to follow up every day for 4 months on that really made it all come together. And don't get me wrong, I'm super proud of it, and I love that story because it is great it's great to make a difference, and it's great to do. Let's just face it, it's great to do something that makes you proud that you did it, and that would be one of them.
Yeah. Well, so, talking about like community impact and journalism and all of this, journalism today is facing many challenges, from declining trust to financial pressures. So what do you think is the biggest challenge facing local journalism right now?
Well, there's all of that. There's a lot of orchestrated attack against legitimate journalism, if you ask me, and there's also a lot of fear about going into journalism right now. The business models are often struggling. We still haven't figured out, a rock solid way to pay for good journalism in a world that desperately needs it. Yeah. But for me, I think the biggest obstacle is is the fact that our distribution is just so fragmented, and it's difficult to get our work before the people who had always wanted it, and because partly because there's so many sources of information. I won't say news, but things that pass as news.
Right.
And so it just makes it difficult for us all to be on the same page.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating for me because, there's a lot of people who say, they won't, I'll see people in the grocery store and they're like, "Oh, it's great to see you. Are you still writing anything?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm writing every day." So, so it's just that a lot of people don't see things the way they used to because a newspaper doesn't land on their front yard, or they're just different obstacles to it. So it's a constant struggle to reach people where they're going to be reached. And for me, I've tried to solve that by not just writing, but doing podcasts and video and every other medium that I can possibly think of. Cartoon histories of Alabama or whatever it might be, So, I think it's really on us to change as vigorously as we can in the moment and hold on to the values of news while at the same time exploring every possible avenue and every creative way we can do to get it out.
Yeah, right now with the media landscape, I feel like you have to be very adaptive in certain ways, especially with social media taking such like a prominent, centerpiece. At least with the school newspaper, we've pivoted from, being mostly a print thing to now mostly posting on our website and promoting on Instagram and stuff like that. And, I think that's helped engagement a bit, but it's still tricky. You don't really know what the right answer is right now. We're kind of in a like in between area, I think.
Yeah, and we've been doing that, fighting that for I guess really for 15 years. And as soon as you get it figured out, the algorithms change.
Right.
So even of course the apps change too, but then within them the algorithms change, and so you have to just understand that you've never got it figured out.
Yeah.
It's a constant effort to do it. And all you can do is do good work, get it to the people you can get it to, and try your best to figure those things out.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true. So your work often exposes corruption and systemic failures. How do you handle the pushback from powerful figures or institutions on that?
You expect it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be critical, then you you better be right. You check your work and you correct your errors and do all the things that a reputable news agency would do. But then, it helps if you build up sort of a tolerance to that, an understanding of the more you do it, the more you're willing to take it, and it honestly feels good. It doesn't matter, sometimes when they push back the hardest is when that you've made the most difference.
Right.
And it honestly comes with the territory. And I also write a column, so I know that no matter what I write, somebody's not going to like it.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, then it's sort of freeing. But you also have to, when people tell you how great you are, you have to also not believe it.
Right.
It's that they're both that when they tell you you're great, they're not right, and when they tell you suck, you're not right. They're not right either.
It's a middle ground of remaining
you know where
humble.
you are.
Yeah.
Right. I do the best I can. Some days are better than others.
Yeah.
So, you just stay confident in your work, and know that when people try to stop you from doing it, that you're on the right track.
Yeah. So what role do you believe investigative journalism plays in holding leaders accountable, like particularly in local communities, as we saw with your work?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical, and that's why I was saying I felt guilty about, if we truly were covering local, entities like we perhaps could, these things would happen less.
Right.
And I worry very much that, I don't want to call it the death of local news because I don't think that's what it is, but I think that the fact that local news has struggled really globally and certainly across America is a real problem. And when we can look deeper there, not only do we solve a lot of our problems and root out a lot of our corruptions closer to home, but we give people information about where they live closest to them. And I think that when we do that, then they don't have to just focus constantly on national ideological issues, which form this great divide that we have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think if local news were even close to sort of what we used to expect it to be, then we would go a long way in sort of pulling back from that divide.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, I think.
I hope. It's a theory.
Yeah, in theory. Well, thank you for coming here today, I wanted to say. And as a last question, just over your career, is there a particular story that has stayed with you the most, and why is that? That's a really hard question because, well, I mean, you didn't ask me which one I liked best, right? You asked me which one has stayed with me. Yeah, which was stuck.
And there is one that I started out as a police reporter back in the late 80s, early 90s, and in what they now call the crack wars, which was a pretty violent time where I lived, and it was pretty violent, and I ended up having to cover quite a few executions in the electric chair in Alabama, the electric chair that was lovingly known as Yellow Mama. And there was one particular one of those in which a young man who had committed a heinous crime, or was convicted of a heinous crime, had a mental disability, and he was electrocuted in that chair, and I was observing it and standing by his father, and they hit him with electricity, and it did not kill him. And they had to hit him again, and I can still hear his father saying over and over, they're torturing him, they're torturing him, they're torturing him. And the execution, death penalty is a complicated issue.
Right.
It's really a complicated issue, and I certainly didn't know what I really thought about it then. And I remember driving back the 4 hours from the execution chamber to my office feeling bad because I didn't feel bad. And I was sort of disappointed in myself for not feeling bad. But that comes with doing the job and being in the moment and all that. But I will say 20, 25 years later, when I kind of understood more about the world, and I kind of understood how many innocent people, frankly, had been put to death in situations like that. And I thought more about that guy and his father, and it started to bother me more. And I'm not saying I would have done anything different. I'm not saying it was an injustice that was committed. But it was a horrifying moment. And I think about it a lot. So you asked me what stays with me.
Yeah.
And that one stays with me. Because we got to be sure. I mean, we got to be sure, and we got to be humane, and we got to be decent.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And it's, those individual moments, it's not always the big stuff that stays.
Right. And it's not I mean, it's just moments of humanity, you know. Those are the things that stand out. Moments when somebody, when you see something, disasters, tornadoes, those sorts of things, they make an impression on you, and they make you who you are to kind of see and understand those things. And sometimes it's healthy just to revisit and think about them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you again for joining us here at Le Moyne. It's really a privilege to have you here. We appreciate you taking time to come and, sit with me and talk about this important stuff.
I'm so happy to be here. You guys have been so nice to me. I'm just really grateful.
Yes, well, thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to follow LCTV and the Dolphin on all our socials for more conversations and stories from here on the Heights. Until next time, take care.